Hello, I'm Doug Musio. This is City Talk. Albany, 2010. An Alice in Wonderland world where logic and proportion have fallen sloppy dead. Where rumors of stories become stories. Where fiction becomes fact and fact fictionalized. Where the news media become the story. Where anyone can create and instantly disseminate news in the palm of the hand. Where on Super Bowl Sunday, the chattering and governing classes had David Paterson resigning over a quote-unquote bombshell New York Times story replete with tales of sex and drugs, where the entire story was fake. To talk about that was the week that was weird and what the episode says about journalism and the news is an old friend, Bob Liff. Bob is the Senior Vice President of M&R Strategic Services. I first met Bob when he was a reporter for Newsday in its heyday. Bob is a colleague here at CUNY TV, hosting the public affairs show CUNY Forum, which airs the first Monday and Saturday of every month. Welcome back, Bob.
Thank you, sir.
This whole episode.
It was pretty weird.
It really was. I mean, you know, Twilight Zone, Alice in Wonderland, all of that fits. What did this whole thing tell you about the world?
This was basically what happened is you had the Times decided to do one of its epic takeouts on the governor, sent a number of reporters up to Albany. I spent a lot of time in room 9 at City Hall, which is the press room, and if you know the LCA room and the shelf, which is a kind of a self-contained universe where the press works.
It's a rabbit warren.
It's a rabbit warren, and it's also very incestuous. Everybody knows sort of what everybody else is doing.
And they're watching each other.
There's supposed to be honor among thieves, but there's sometimes more thieves than honor. The Times starts doing what reporters do, which is ask every conceivable question. You ask a question, you don't know where it's going to take you. As they continue to ask, and the people, and don't forget, there's a bunch of yentas. We're talking about a state capitol or a city hall. I mean, these are people who gossip. You know, we all gossip.
Right.
And
it's good.
In this case, as you make the point, because of the kind of proliferation of instant media, the lack of editing, Twitter, people emailing back and forth, stories don't have time to kind of stew properly and cook properly and kind of bake properly. And the beginning of the story will, in this case, became the story. The rumors ran rampant. People turned on the Times and demanded that the Times clean up this mess.
Including the governor and
his staffers, which is outrageous. It's not the Times' job to run with a story until the Times is ready to run with a story. And the fact that there are, I mean, you had a situation in which people were writing stories about rumors, about stories that hadn't run. I mean, this is bizarre.
I know. I was sort of in the middle of this getting communication. On Super Bowl Sunday at 7 o'clock in the morning, all kinds of rumors that the governor's going to resign. The Times has got a bombshell. I call up Richie Fife, the governor's campaign manager, and say, Richie, what's going on? And he says, it's insane. There's no story. They've lost their minds. And I presume he was talking about the press, but it was out there. Okay, you're a reporter. What's the lead? What's the headline? Summarize.
You know what the headline is?
No, I'm asking you.
The state is $30 billion in debt over the next 4 years. They're looking to close state parks for the first time. Are you ready for this? Since Niagara Falls State Park became the first state park in the nation in 1885. I actually learned that the other day.
This is good.
We're looking to lay off workers. They're looking to lay off 1,000 people at the MTA. Taxes are down. And we're talking, and we have, you know, I mean, you had 2 headlines. You know, one was, I did not have sex
with that woman,
which I think is not a very justifiable headline, but you have another headline there,
right,
which I think is justifiable.
The Daily News.
Which is the Daily News calling it Captain Chaos. And so basically you have a situation of chaos. And so I think what the lead is that you have chaos as the state faces profound fiscal problems. And it's a total distraction from any kind of an ability to kind of deal with these problems. And it comes at a time of political paralysis. The chaos goes along with political paralysis. You have a governor who's very politically weak, you have an attorney general who's running a stealth campaign against him. You have a state senate where right now you have a 31-30. I don't know if that's, it's not a majority, but
it's not even a quorum.
It's bizarre. I mean, you have a state of paralysis, which just as you have in Washington, where you have the Republicans doing nothing but saying no, it's not even clear that there's people who have the ability to say yes in Albany.
Okay, so you've got.
So the headline to me is substance.
Okay, and in fact, that we're not dealing with the substance because of all this sideshow.
Because of the circus. And don't get me wrong, I love a good sideshow.
Absolutely, we all love sideshow. Let's go back to the Times' original reporting on the story. The fact that it exploded out, questions. I mean, obviously what happened was the reporters call a source, they get asked questions, some of the questions are lurid, the source says, the Times is onto something, and it spreads like wildfire, partly because of the technology.
And because of the blogs.
And because of the blogs.
You have some superb you have now really 4 very good blogs that are right on top of you have the Daily News blog with Liz Benjamin. You have the Capital Confidential blog
with
which is the Albany Times Union. You have the Politicker blog at the Observer
with Ozzy
and now you have the Knickerbocker blog at the New York
And they're
Post.
all good. They're all solid reporters. But it was Twitter that, in a sense, sets off the firestorm. One of Ozzy's colleagues at the Observer twitters, "Has anybody heard of a bombshell that the Times is writing on the governor?" And boom.
See, but is that? Pardon my being old-fashioned. Is that news? I was at City Hall. I was at City Hall during the Giuliani administration when there were all these rumors about his relationship with his press secretary at the time, Christine Latagano. And I was, frankly, deeply offended. I mean, I thought it was replete with sexism. If you couldn't show me that it was factual and you couldn't show me that it had some effect on government, that was gossip. We all gossip. The fact that we sit around and we gossip about people's sex lives or about people's habits off the job or about who's doing what to whom, it's one of the reasons you get into the news business is because you're interested in minding other people's business. But there's a big difference between doing that, sitting around, even if it's room 9 or it's the LCA room, the legislative correspondence room in Albany, and putting that into the cold black on white print or putting it on the air. There's a huge difference, and that's what the instantaneous world of journalism today is missing, is editing, time to reflect. That's a change that is not for the better.
In one sense, this episode could be seen as the death of responsible journalism. I mean, you're talking about the 2, tabloid head. Okay, I posed this to the head of the AP in Albany. He says, no, it's not the death. He says, but that we're at the crossroads, that he's sitting in the middle of this intersection, and it could go in one of 2 ways. It could go back to, at least in some way, the more responsible edited journalism, or more likely this world of rumor, innuendo, spin,
right.
opinion.
The technology has changed things. I think that this is a tension that's existed in journalism, since the rags of the Revolutionary War and the ideological papers. And you go to England, you go to Europe where you have party-related papers.
Yeah, but you don't have BlackBerrys.
And here you have the technology has changed the speed with which this happens. But is it that different than people beating up the Clintons over Whitewater, of taking a failed land deal and trying to create a constitutional crisis totally out of proportion, where you have people ideologically using the press to try to score a political point? Is that, I mean, it's different because it's happening now, but sometimes, I'm not sure, except for technology, which has sped the whole process up, and made it available to a lot more people. I'm not sure how qualitatively different it's quantitatively different.
In some sense, though, it seems as if to use your terminology, the quantitative differences, the speed, the ubiquity,
it's huge.
The access produces a qualitative difference. It's not only a difference of degree; it really becomes transformational and it's different in kind.
But at least conceptually, this tension has existed ever since Gutenberg.
Okay.
Oh, how's that? That
was good. 15th century is a good century to go back to. Now, one of the sort of the news items out here is the strange bedfellows aspect of this. You've got Rick Lazio, the presumptive Republican nominee, as almost the sole defender of David Paterson.
Rick Lazio is very much trying to get ink on anything. So, I mean, Rick Lazio, to me. If you believe the polls, which overwhelmingly show the Attorney General defeating the governor, that Andrew Cuomo is going to knock off Paterson in the primary, and I assume that the governor is running. I assume the governor is not, that the governor is not just yelling through his hat, that he's really going to stick in there.
Right, he's going out in the ballot box or the pine box.
That's right, and I believe that he's going to go out in the ballot box.
Yeah, this is a game of chicken, and he's ripped off the steering wheel, it seems.
Well, he's got, I know David Paterson for a long time. He was my senator, and I live up in Morningside Heights in that Harlem district, and he's a class guy. He's a wonderful story, and you could argue that Paterson, on substance, is saying the right things. He's been sounding the call for the budget crisis before anybody else.
Yeah, but saying the right thing, you got to deliver.
Well, no, I actually have a different analysis of this, which is that those of us who knew David, for many, many years, and thought that we thought that he would be weak on substance and good on politics. When Spitzer got caught with his socks up, or I guess he now says, and Ashley Dupree says his socks weren't up. But setting aside, I just love the image. That when he got thrust into being governor, the general sense was he's going to be good on politics and lousy on substance. You can make an argument that he's been good on substance, but he's been so bad on politics that it's destroying the substance. I mean, politics is not a dirty word. Politics is part and parcel of governing. And that the politics has been such a disaster that he's been unable, that the rational call he's been making to impress people with the depth of this fiscal crisis, which he was doing before anybody else, is totally lost.
Right, and there are substantive successes, the reform of the Rockefeller drug laws, economic development. There are substantive accomplishments, but I haven't heard of them.
Plus, now we have an election year.
Right.
And don't forget, this is also, I'm trying to say this nice because I've been, everything I'm saying about press, I've been guilty of. So I mean, I don't want, this is not.
This is not a confession. Just
no. But I had ink in my blood. I love the business. I think it's a critical, kind of free-floating ion part of the civic debate, and that politics is more fun to cover than substance.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, sex, drugs, rock and roll, fantasy islands, come on. Versus budget deficits, tax increases. Come on. No, we understand that. Cuomo, there's, both the Paterson folks and sort of the whispering out there, there's that Andrew orchestrated it, he fanned it. Your sense of it, my sense of it is different, but what's your sense?
I think you may argue that his people exploited it, but I don't know that they created it. I don't think that they have some plumber's team running around digging up dirt on the governor. But I mean, Andrew Cuomo, Andrew's done a brilliant job politically. I think he's done a good job on substance, but I think he's done a brilliant job politically, which is that he decided, because he comes into this office viewed as his father's son with sharp elbows, self-promoting, somebody.
And he recognizes that.
He recognizes it, and he decides that the best politics is good government. That doing his job. I know I worked on New Yorkers Against the Death Penalty. He and his father, front lines against the death penalty. We couldn't get a meeting with him. I mean, it's not like he disagreed with us. We supported him. We did all this stuff. We couldn't, because he felt that he wanted to focus on not political issues that were somewhat extraneous. Even though we had a death penalty case working its way through to the Court of Appeals, and he eventually decided he would not represent the state in that because, for a variety of technical reasons, because this was an appeal of, even though the death penalty had been already declared unconstitutional. But it's not like he told us about this. So, I mean, he's not like stroking us politically. And, and I was central in that whole effort in this state. And so I could tell you, it wasn't like he kind of played us.
Right.
He just, and I'm not sure he ignored us because his people know what's going on.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a degree to which he's, to be seen as not playing politics is good politics.
Absolutely. And
so, having said that,
go ahead.
I know that his people have been putting together a campaign for quite some time. I know that they've talked to people who I know to work on the campaign. I mean, this is no great, this is no great shock. I think the governor is right to call him out, saying you can't keep hiding in the rose garden. And
see, I disagree.
I think the governor is right to try to call him out on the budget right now.
Strategically, not necessarily right substantively, but I would argue Cuomo's right strategically. Why get involved?
Oh, I think he's right strategically, but I think that the state is, I think that politically I think he's right. But I think the state
substantively, you think he should be talking about this stuff as an undeclared candidate? Come on.
The state isn't, because he isn't undeclared, he's a thinly undeclared candidate, as far, if you believe.
Go ahead.
This is like beyond scuttlebutt. That the state is in severe crisis, and it's I think that the governor has. It's fair for the governor to say, if you want to run for governor, you should be, get in the boiling pot and tell us what you would do about the budget. I don't think that's an unreasonable. It's good strategy for the governor. But there's also, I think, a sense of substantive legitimacy in the question.
That. Okay. My feeling is that Andrew doesn't announce until he indicts Pedro Espada, so he gets one pile under his belt. In terms of substance, though, Cuomo's put together what might be even a national agenda here in terms of what he's done, so he's formidable. So Paterson's right to worry, but Cuomo didn't need to be involved in this at all. He could just sit back and this just overwhelmed Paterson
I think
anyway. Not only Cuomo personally, maybe even his staff.
No, that's correct, because Cuomo is doing the job. His job involved, the kind of stuff he's doing on Wall Street is a traditional thing that, most attorney generals, just the way the Manhattan District Attorney oversees Wall Street, the New York State Attorney General oversees Wall Street, and that has huge national implications. And he's handled that very well. Spitzer handled it very well. Morgenthau was, wrote the book on it from the Office of Manhattan District Attorney. So yes, he is doing his job. But if he wants to be seen in a broader perspective, the kinds of issues that go beyond the law department, which is what a governor has to deal with, I think that the governor is justified substantively.
Okay.
And, obviously he's doing it for political purposes, that, saying, come on in with the rest of us. Get down in the muck with the rest of us. What would you do?
Okay. Let's go back to the time. Let's go back to that was the week that was weird. The Times finally, after weeks of all these rumors and the public editor writing in the Sunday paper that it's not our responsibility.
And he's right.
Right. We didn't start the rumor. We didn't feed the rumor. None of that. He's right. They released two stories. One is a page one above the fold expose about one of the mayor's aides, David Johnson.
The governor's aides. Right.
Governor's aides, rather. And the second is a piece titled, As Campaign Nears is Seen as Remote. Okay. You read both of those stories and you've read the reaction. Talk about the stories from a journalistic point of view as well as the political elements of it.
Well, I thought that the David Johnson story was, it was interesting, which is in and of itself a justification for doing a story, period. Having said that, I think that, there was a letter in the Times this week, I believe, from somebody from the Fortune Society saying, because this guy had a record as a teenager, why do you write about that as if that's some kind of expose that in some way would make him ineligible to have this kind of a job.
Right. This is a positive story of a person overcoming
but it's not
his
because it's also, and again, this is where they're not as explicit on one of the reasons to do that story, which is the degree to which Paterson is surrounded by a smaller and smaller number of people.
Right.
And that he's getting his advice, which is what the second story was,
well, why
which was a very powerful story.
Right, why didn't they do the second story first? And then follow that up with because the second story was the piece that everybody had been talking about.
No, that wasn't the piece that everyone was talking about.
Well, no.
Right.
It was the piece that the Times was originally going to write that became the story that everybody was talking about. It didn't have the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, even though it was there by innuendo. Talk about the pieces.
Well, but the second piece is I think the second piece is very damaging to the governor. It's a sense of, there's almost a bunker mentality outlined in the piece, and I think that that description, that's a very fair story, even though it is not publicly sourced.
They talked to dozens of people, and they only sourced, I think, Lee Bollinger saying that he didn't get a call from Paterson.
See, but this is like people who take shots at the New York Post because it's owned by Murdoch and it's a conservative paper, and therefore you should somehow discount what they say. You shouldn't discount what you say. We have a luxury in this city in particular of 3 dailies. Throw in Newsday as a 4th daily, which is really Long Island. You throw in
good political reporters.
And now you get the Wall Street Journal is coming in with a New York.
You got
edition.
the blogs.
You got the blogs. You got El Diario.
Right. Gotham Gazette. You've got all kinds of stuff.
You got multiple language. We have the luxury of all these. You have if you are an informed citizen, you read let's say you read the Post and you think that Fred Dicker has some bias or something, then you filter that story through what you believe. I mean, it's very valuable. I was telling you this story before when I worked for Jimmy Carter, and the Washington Times opened up. The Washington Times was a conservative paper. It's a Mooney paper.
Right. It
was edited by this guy Arno de Borschgrave, who was like a monarchist, some strange European kind of a guy who thought we should have had a parliamentary government. And I know all my liberal friends are saying, I'm not going to read that. And I told them they were nuts. They should read that before they read the Washington Post, so you know what your critics are thinking about. So you should read everything, whether it's the New York Times, the New York Post, the Daily News, the Albany Times Union, the Buffalo paper. You read it and you filter it through your own intelligence. So this idea that you have to be reinforced by the press, I think is, doesn't give citizens enough credit.
Okay. But the big but is that...
The big but?
The big but.
Okay.
The B-U-T. But
okay.
Is that the tabloids went down the rabbit hole to continue the Alice in Wonderland metaphor.
Oh, a lot more than just the tabloids did.
And the responsible press went down the rabbit hole. I've been hearing stories that editors at some, responsible papers really were on reporters to write this stuff. And one of the untold stories is the reporters bucking the editors, bucking the mastheads. There was a lot of pressure there.
First of all, let me just do one thing.
Let
me object to a distinction between the tabloids and responsible journalism.
Okay. I withdraw that. Okay. Because one might argue that the Times, as a responsible paper, also went down the rabbit hole. But maybe not.
The Times is still, the only thing the Times has that other papers don't right now, because the quality of reporters, there's a very similar, the New York Post, I'm a huge fan of David Seifman, of Fred Dicker. These are people
who know politics,
have been at their beats
and
for years and years and years and years and years, and are tremendous reporters. Seifman is probably the best reporter I worked with at City Hall.
And he's the dean.
Is the New York Post bureau chief there.
City
Just
Hall.
A pure. Now with Seifman, the difference is you couldn't find his politics.
No.
Dicker is because Dicker is both a columnist and a reporter
and a radio show
and a
host.
radio show.
Yep,
Dicker is his own little conglomerate.
Okay, now let's go back to the nature.
Yes.
No. Let's go back.
But the point I'm making is that the Times is just like everybody else in the sense that they have the same process. They can just throw more reporters at stories than the other papers will, because as much fiscal trouble as financial trouble as they're having,
resources, they've got access, they've got the reputation. So one of the outcomes of the story is, the Times is still real powerful. They scared everybody, all the rest of the journalists, and they created this firestorm. Not that they wanted to, but they did it. Okay, let's go back to this new media world. What do you see in the next couple of years? Where are the news media? Where are we going here?
The instant quality of it really is a business question. And, you know, at some point it becomes too expensive to, you know, knock down trees to create pulp to physically put out a paper. You know, again, in New York City, you know, 3 million of us ride the subway every day. You want to have a newspaper, or else if you look up, somebody in the next seat may stab you to death. So you have to keep looking at your, looking at your paper.
Oh, wait, that's the old New York. No, go ahead.
So we're a little bit different. But, you know, you look at what the Times just announced, that in a year, you're going to have to pay to access their online paper, unless you have a, I don't have a subscription at home, because I believe in getting my butt with 2 T's out of bed in the morning and walking to Mr. Song's newsstand on 110th Street. You know, that's, you know, but I'm going to have to get the paper at home. But I'm going to have, well, I'm an old guy because I read the paper, period. So, you know, but now all of a sudden, is that a sign that we're going to be eventually losing this physical product? And
what all that goes into it in terms of journalism, editing, fact-checking, etc.
You know, the technology does not have to change the values that undergird journalism. I mean, some of the best journalism being done right now is being done at Politico.com, at some of the, at, you know, Salon, at Slate, some of the even online magazines, even Huffington Post is a bit more kind of ideological, but I'm talking about straighter, you know, straighter centrist, kind of a CNN as opposed to a Fox. Or an CNN as opposed to a Fox or an MSNBC. So it doesn't have to be, but there's always, you know, I mean, there's the degree to which shooting for the bottom is more profitable. That's not new now. That's not new as the technology changes. I mean, you know, I was talking to somebody the other day about the Hearst. You know, I mean, the war of, you know, the Spanish-American War was a race to the bottom by the you know, between Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst.
You got to stop.
Right.
So the more things change, the more they remain the same, but they'll still change.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think that makes sense.
Almost. See you next week when we will talk with 2 military veterans and current CUNY students and CUNY's Assistant Coordinator of Veterans Affairs about the work of the City University and their adjustment to civilian life. Bob, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Doug.
Hello, I'm Doug Musio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.